It must be a second Wednesday, and that means it's Panic Index. Now, I've done something different. So, I've got the panicked look. This one is the one that caused me to come up with the Panic Index. So, I ordered these decals, or decals, as people might call them, which are the large logos, which I have. They're here. You guys know what I mean. The big logos that I use for videos on single teams and whatnot. So, I still order them. I still find like some online that I'm like, oh, I don't have that logo. I actually got 4 or 5 of them I'm cutting out and putting on magnets this week. And the seller on Amazon actually threw these in for nothing. They were just in there. And I'm like, oh, okay. So there was happy faces and there was this panic looking face. And I was like, oh, that's good. I can use that. That's fantastic. So this is completely by accident that brought us here. Now, in the middle is the It's Getting Weird, where it's a team that shouldn't be winning, but they are. And on this side, I've got the Minnesota Vikings. There's a reason for this. In NFL standards, I can't think of a better team to put up here as just wait till the playoffs. Don't talk to me about them having a good record. Wait till the playoffs. And down here we have the Miami Dolphins. Everybody knew they were going to be bad this year, and they were. And the newsworthy item of the Minnesota Dolphins is they're not as bad as everybody thought they were going to be. They're only 3-10 rather than 0-13. So, huzzah. So that's the 4 corners, and this is the It's Getting Weird. We'll see if anybody ends up in there. The only one that was in the It's Getting Weird category last time was Ottawa. All right. So again, going in alphabetical order, this is happy fan base, panicked fan base, very chill fan base with the team that's doing well, but wake us up when the playoffs arrive. And then the, yeah, we suck, but we knew we weren't going to be any good. So we're clear on that? All right. I know people are going to be like, that's not how graphs work. It's how my graph works. And for anybody who wants to talk to me about how graphs work, you can send it to you're taking this too seriously. Please just enjoy this video for what it is. Really seriously, you're taking it way too seriously at gmail.gov. All right, Anaheim. Anaheim right now, honestly, I'm going to put them a little bit on the panic side, just a little bit. Like, we knew they weren't probably going to be very good anyways, but you've got some veteran players in this lineup that it'd be kind of nice to see them win something. So I can't really put them on this side, although I'm sure there's Ducks fans who are going to say, well, we knew we weren't going to be any good. Touche. I did think Anaheim had a good shot at bouncing back, and they still are mathematically in it because we're still really early in the year technically. About 50 games left. But, yeah, I have them a little bit on the panic side. I think the more disturbing thing with them has been John Gibson does not look like John Gibson this year. Arizona. Arizona fans, very highly happy right now and should be absolutely overjoyed with the standing of their team right now. They're tied for first in the Pacific. That's fantastic. Things are going pretty well. Boston. Now, Boston, you're going to hear people say, well, they don't know if they can sign Krug, so there's maybe some reason for panic. Nah, I think the Boston fan base right now is in the just wake me up when the playoffs start kind of state. While the team is not, due to the brawl they had at practice. I say brawl, but it's kind of a brawl. Like, it's not like some 70s style slap shot brawl. So the Bruins, I think things are going to be pretty chill right up until late March, early April, and then we can see whether or not fans are going to be ready to panic. They have a 10-point cushion for first place in their division, so there's not really any reason to be overly panicked about anything right now. So that's why I have them where they have them. Buffalo. Buffalo fans are exuberant about the development of Jack Eichel. They're in the playoffs right now. They're not comfortably in the playoffs. And while they've looked better in December, I do have them on the positive side, but not like jubilant, like, oh, we've arrived. The good news for Buffalo is last year, after they fell off the map, so after mid-November when everything just fell apart, they didn't stop falling apart. This time it looks like they've turned things around, and that's important, because this is a team that has not made the playoffs since 1865, I think it was. I think it was 1860. It feels like it, doesn't it? So, yeah, for Buffalo, it would be nice to see them get in there. And, you know, it's always nice to see a new team get in there. especially when it's a new and exciting young team. And this nobody is left on that roster for Buffalo right now that made it the last time they were in there, because it was 1865. Calgary. So where does Calgary go on this board? See, Calgary's interesting. I'll put Calgary ahead of Buffalo, as in it's a happier fan base. I'm not going to put them in the jubilant category. I know they've won 6 in a row, and fans are quite happy. But there's still some wondering, okay, so is Ward, is this just a temporary bump under Ward? Is it going to kind of fall off? What's going to happen? But still, I have them on the positive side. I could not justify having them on the negative side. And Carolina, I'll put Carolina right there with Calgary. Again, Carolina's playing well. They look like they're going to be in the playoffs. If they play Boston in the first round, which is where the matchups are as I'm recording this, that'd be quite the playoffs. I don't know that I don't know that Boston would beat them again either. I think Carolina would be in the line for some revenge there after the way last year's series went. And I think Carolina, I think a lot of their core players have got better this year. Chicago. I don't know that a lot was expected of Chicago. I'm going to throw them right kind of... nah. I don't want to have them too close to the panic. But at the same time, I don't want to put them into, well, we knew we were going to be bad territory either. Chicago, much like Anaheim, you've got Kane, you've got Taves, you've got Keith, you've got Crawford. You've got all of these guys who are now on the older side compared to most of the rest of the NHL. The NHL's average age, I think, is now 25.9 or 26. It's somewhere in that area. So they're all above that. Now, Kane's having another really, really good year. And he's been excellent over the last month. But how many more years in his prime does he have? So while it's entertaining to look at the Chicago Blackhawks and say, well, we knew they probably weren't going to make the playoffs, the reality is that with where they are at the salary cap, which is, at times struggling to even put a full lineup on the ice, Chicago's got some challenges here. They've got some real challenges. And I don't want to put them on this side because that would make you think, well, they'll be fine going forward. And I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure that Chicago's going to be fine going forward. It's an interesting time for the Hawks. Colorado, right now Colorado is right up in about, I'll put them up right there with Arizona as things get healthier. And I know not everybody's healthy. I don't think we're ever going to reach a point with Colorado where everybody's healthy. I don't. I think it's just, it is what it is. But for Colorado right now, they are 1 point back of St. Louis as we're recording this, and could be ahead of St. Louis at this time tomorrow for first place in their division. And one of the best teams in the West, absolutely. And that was my feeling before the season started. I haven't seen anything right now to tell me that's changed. Columbus. Columbus, we kind of knew they weren't going to be any good. And so I'll put them on this side. Now, Columbus has had the occasional victories here and there, and a lot of their victories have had to do almost entirely with Korpisalo. Korpisalo has a really good game, they win. When he's average or not very good, they lose. And that seems to be how their season's going. And that's standard for a team that has trouble scoring goals, which Columbus does. So we'll see whether or not they get things going. If Columbus were to start winning, I wouldn't put them up in the Minnesota Vikings category. I would put them more over here. But because we kind of expected them not to be very good, they end up over here. And this is where the whole, you need to do it as a graph chart. No. Now, it doesn't work because, again, it's not linear this way necessarily. In some cases, a team might go up here. In some cases, a team might go down this way. They might go over that way. Can change from week to week. Dallas. Dallas is really, you know what? I'm going to put Dallas right in the middle right now. So with the removal of Jim Montgomery and the hiring of Rick Bowness as the coach for the rest of the season, and apparently that's it. They're going to make him the head coach for the rest of the year, and they're going to ride it out. There's obviously some confusion in the Dallas fan base. I don't know that we will find out what happened, but the coach being removed makes me kind of concerned. Now, I've also been concerned because of Dallas's offensive production not being where I'd like it to be, but they're still winning games, and right now they look like a playoff team. So I can't really put them on the panic side. I can't really put them on the everything's great side because we don't know how things are going to go under bonus. One win is great. It was against New Jersey. So, grain of salt on that one. And New Jersey didn't really start playing until about halfway through the game when they started taking shots at the net. Detroit, well, Detroit's really kind of the ultimate Miami Dolphins of the NHL. We knew that they'd be bad. We didn't know how bad. This is 12 losses in a row and on pace for less than 20 wins. And on pace means if they win at the pace they've done it, not over the last 12 games, they're on pace for 7 wins due to the last 12 games. That's it, no more wins. But as bad as it is so hard to get through a season like this if you're a fan of a team. And when people ask me, how did you end up being a fan of more than one team? People that asked me that didn't watch the Canucks in the 80s. There was no way that I could just remain a hockey fan and only be a fan of the Canucks. As a kid, as a teenager, it was depressing. So I kind of needed somebody else to cheer for, because watching a team go out there and win 20 games a year, it was hard. And they didn't have, their scoring wasn't great, their defense was kind of bad, and their goaltending was porous at many, many times. So, and even though they had 80s night in Vancouver and everybody's, yay, 80s, all I can think is, if you guys had lived through the 80s, you wouldn't be cheering. Except John Garrett, his mask was fantastic. Now, and there were some good players on the teams, but really, when you're in the same division as the Oilers dynasty and the Flames, who would win the Cup in '89, it's just not fair. Oilers. Oilers fans right now are likely still very happy. They're still first in the division. I'll put them up with Buffalo. I'll put them in the same spot as Buffalo, because there are some cracks starting to show. They showed again last night, where they're down 3-0 against Carolina. They come back, they tie the game, and then they fall apart again, and they lose the game 6-3. And Mikko Koskinen, who has been a really good story this year, has started to show some cracks as well. So for the Oilers, they have some concerns here. They're not too far ahead of Calgary and Vegas. They are tied with Arizona, and it doesn't take very many bad weeks to find yourself 4th in the Pacific, or perhaps 5th if Vancouver gets their act together, which is a big if. Florida, and again, Florida's kind of tough to pin down. I'll put Florida on the positive side, and I'll put Florida on the positive side because while they aren't playing fantastic, last night against Tampa, the score kind of flattered them because Bobrovsky had a great game. But Florida's been kind of really wildly unpredictable. And while right now, again, they are technically in a playoff spot in the Atlantic, which is an adventure, they don't look solidly entrenched in it, and you're still waiting for Tampa Bay to come up and grab a spot. And, of course, Toronto could very well get hot as well. So if Toronto and Tampa were to play like they should, it gets very difficult for Florida and Buffalo to hold their spots. But it gets more difficult for Florida, which seems to be more inconsistent. Buffalo had a miserable descent in November. Florida's just been wildly inconsistent all year. LA, yes, the guys that I'm wearing, we knew they'd be bad. They've been bad. I'm putting them ahead of Detroit because at home they've been decent. It's been respectable. On the road, probably not so much. The road record for LA is bad. And I've got them on this side, not the panic side, even though they've got the veterans and all that, because we kind of knew this was coming. Whereas Chicago, there was a little bit of a higher expectation. LA, they've got to figure this out, though, with the goaltending. Because next year, Peterson has to clear waivers, so they're going to have to figure something out. Now, they may very well just trade Cal Peterson. That may be their play. They may build up his value, and they may trade him to a team like Toronto that may eventually be looking for a backup goaltender. And apparently Toronto's not looking for a backup right now. So for Toronto fans, like, we'll just get a backup. Apparently not right now. Minnesota, yeah, I'll give them the it's getting weird. But I'll put them a little bit down from it because they're not like having a fantastic run right now. They're still getting points, though. And I don't know. I mean, if you're a Minnesota fan, you may look at this and say, well, they're a veteran team. If they're going to take a run at it, they have to do it now. You may look at this and say they need to tear it apart. What this is doing is it's hiding the fact this team needs to tear things down, and it's going to leave Bill Guerin thinking they're closer than they are. I can't argue with either of those points of view, so I've got them under the it's getting weird part of the board. I'm not sure. Like, is Minnesota better off not winning and missing the playoffs and getting a good draft pick? Are they better off making the playoffs and making a statement? And what would that statement be if they got knocked out in the first round again? Montreal. Things in Montreal have been bad. There is definitely, I'll put them on the panic side, but the win over Pittsburgh last night and just their general play over the last week and a half, I know they weren't all wins. I think Montreal's getting better. I think the panic over Primo being called up is there, but I don't think it's the end of the world calling up a kid. If he's able to handle it, that's fine. If he can't, he's a kid. He's going to be able to go back to the American League and just forget about it relatively quickly. It's a good learning experience for him either way. But still, there's some concern anytime Montreal's outside of a playoff spot, and when there's injuries mounting as they kind of have, that's going to be concerning to people. Nashville. Nashville, I'm going to put over on the wake me up when it's the playoffs side of things, and I'm going to put them right on the line because they seem to be winning enough to stay relevant, but they're losing enough to make you concerned. So, again, they're one of those teams that has some games in hand on some of the teams ahead of them. So, as long as they win at a decent clip, they make the playoffs. But at the same time, they're losing a number of games as well. And there have been some rough losses along the way. So, I'm going to put Nashville right on the line and kind of wake me up when it's the playoffs side of the board. Because they have a pretty good team that's built not only for now, but for a while to come. They're definitely going to be able to compete again next year and the year after that. It's a pretty solid system. The only part we have yet to see is whether or not UC Saros can spend a full season as a starter, if he's got that, or if they're still going to need Rene, and if Rene can transition to being the backup, because I think we're close to that point. New Jersey. I'm going to put you guys right down next to the panic. Because, again, for New Jersey, this season's been a disaster. They fired the coach, which everybody wanted to see in New Jersey fandom, and it's not getting a whole lot better. PK Subban's contract, now everybody sees why it was traded, and this is something that could have been seen coming in terms of him being overpaid. But I will say this. The crash he's experienced has been way worse than I think any of us had expected. And the way this team is playing is just, it's insane how bad things are. And I'm not sure when Taylor Hall ends up getting moved, but the rumor is it may be sooner rather than later. I just don't report on where he might go very much because we don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody has a clue. Everybody thinks they know. At the end of the day, he'll probably go somewhere we're not talking about right now. New York Islanders. The New York Islanders are still pretty darn happy with where they are. They've had a rough-ish last couple of weeks, less wins than they were getting. So they're 7 points behind the Washington Capitals now, and yet they're still pretty decently cushioned from falling out of the playoffs or anything like that at this stage. So still a pretty happy fan base, just not Arizona or Colorado happy right now. New York Rangers. Man, the Rangers, they're tough because, again, they win one, lose one, win one, lose one. I'm going to put them a little bit on the panic side. Kakko is not producing at a level that I think was expected in his rookie year. Panarin's been great. If it wasn't for Artemi Panarin, if they hadn't signed Panarin, they'd be down with New Jersey. Panarin is dragging them along. And if it wasn't for a resurgent Henrik Lundqvist, they'd be down there too. Not that Georgiev's been a slouch either. So for the Rangers, I have them a little bit on the panic side of things. Ottawa, we knew Ottawa was going to be bad. And I had them under the it's getting weird. I'm going to put them right kind of on the line because they're winning enough games to be respectable. They're not winning enough games to get anywhere near a playoff spot. There's nothing to panic about here. Nothing. You guys are worried like, they're going to hose themselves out of a good playoff spot or a good draft pick. They're not going to. There's no concern about them losing a good draft pick. Not for me, anyways. And I want to see Ottawa get the number one draft pick on some level. Sorry, Detroit and New Jersey, but it would be nice to see Lafreniere playing for the Ottawa Senators. Be nice to see him on Detroit. I just want to see this kid in the NHL, basically. Philadelphia Flyers fans are very happy right now. I don't have a whole lot to add to that. This has been a great run. And even though Konechny's hurt, and that might be a reason to drop him down a bit, I'm not going to do that. Pittsburgh, fans want the injuries to stop. So, yes, they're happy, and the record's great, but they want the injuries to stop. So I'll leave them kind of near the panic line just because it seems like one of the few guys who's healthy right now is Malkin, and that just feels dangerous. That just feels like something that we don't know if that can continue. So I have Pittsburgh closer to the line. San Jose, we're back in panic land with San Jose. Yep, a winless December will do that for you. We had a San Jose team that in November looked great, and on the power rankings they were slowly moving up. People didn't like they were slowly moving up, but they did, and now they've kind of crashed out again. So, for San Jose, this has been a really bewildering season. They can't have 2 good months in a row, I guess. Bad October, good November, bad December, I guess. Good January's coming then. But for San Jose right now, there's every reason to panic. Erik Karlsson eats up a lot of cap for a long time. And I really think that contract is going to be one that they regret sooner rather than later. St. Louis. St. Louis is kind of the ultimate wake us up on the playoffs roll around. And not for Vikings reasons, but more of a 49ers back in the 80s with Joe Montana kind of attitude, like we know we're going to be good, so wake me up when the playoffs arrive. And for them, their fan base, they won the Stanley Cup in June, so But remember, if they win back-to-backs, come on. I guarantee you a lot of Blues fans that right now are saying, it's fine, we don't really need it. As soon as the playoffs roll around, there's going to be a lot of, we could win that would be great if we won back-to-back. That'd be awesome. Imagine the Chicago fans then. And then, you could tell Chicago fans, hey, at least we could win 2 in a row. So there's that. And I do think that'll take over once we get closer to the playoffs. Tampa Bay, there's every reason to panic in Tampa Bay right now. This is, on paper, the best team in the NHL. And I mean that. I do think they're the most talented team, top to bottom, in the National Hockey League. And the fact they're below the playoff line, I don't care that they have games in hand, they should not be below the playoff line. And John Cooper, at some point, I would think his job comes into question. And I don't know where you go from here. I think you kind of need a coach that's going to crack the whip a little bit. I think things are kind of, I don't know, it just feels like there's a rut going on with Tampa, and they kind of enjoy it. Kind of sitting back and enjoying their rut. It's all fine. Because they figure they're over in this area with Boston and St. Louis, like, hey, wake us up when the playoffs arrive. Problem is they're below the playoff line. So if we're waking you up at playoff time, it's to go golfing. And that's not the plan. Toronto. Things are getting happy in Toronto again. I'm going to put Toronto up with Buffalo and the Oilers. Not at this level yet, but it's getting there. And the record under Sheldon Keefe has been very good. It was great to start, and then it kind of fell off for about a week there where things looked kind of bad, and they were getting into some bad habits. But some victories, including last night's in Vancouver, showed that these guys are a new team, and it's different. And so for Toronto, things look pretty darn good right now. Vancouver, we're back into panic land with Vancouver. Not a lot, but 3 points out of the playoffs, and Ferland gets hurt again, and Edler's been out, and it feels like this team's sort of losing its goal-scoring edge, and their goaltending has been good, not great. Their defense, when you get past Quinn Hughes, has been okay, not great. And there is some reason to be somewhat panicked in Vancouver. Notice I said somewhat, not entirely, but somewhat. And we'll see how they go from here. But I have a lot of concerns with Vancouver right now. The cautiously optimistic fan that I was a month and a half ago, he's being tested right now. Really, really tested. But keep in mind that the first-round draft pick that they traded to Tampa is protected for this season. So if the Canucks didn't make the playoffs, if they got the number 1 draft pick in the draft, and they drafted Lafreniere, they look like geniuses for next year, right? It's not going to happen. Just saying, if they did, right? Vegas, things are getting better in Vegas. I'll put Vegas with Calgary and Carolina. They're breathing down the necks of the Oilers and the Arizona Coyotes. They've strung some wins together. They had that 4-game winning streak. Now they're on another winning streak after that win over Chicago last night. Things are going well in Vegas. So, not going to lie. I'm not going to try to make any drama out of it. Things are going pretty well for the Vegas Golden Knights right now. No reason to have them any lower than that. Washington. I'm going to put them over here with Boston and St. Louis. And I hope the Vikings pay attention to this because, Stanley Cup in 2011, Stanley Cup 2019, Stanley Cup 2018. Maybe it's Minnesota's turn. But yeah, Washington is kind of a, once the playoffs roll around. And there are some Caps fans who may very well be nervous, like, we're winning too much right now. This is too much. And I had that feeling with Boston, too. Like, it was just too easy. And you need that adversity during the season. You need to go through those dry stretches so you don't get a feeling like you're superhuman and you can beat everybody. Because when you feel that way, it can turn ugly and fast. So Washington so far, they haven't really had that adversity. First couple weeks of the season, they didn't necessarily look great with protecting leads, but outside of that, they've been fantastic. And Winnipeg, I'm gonna put Winnipeg. My throat did that thing. I'm going to put Winnipeg. Every now and then my voice box just goes, no. And so I got to power through it. I'm putting Winnipeg up here as happy as Colorado, Arizona, or Philly because everything has come together for the Winnipeg Jets so far this year. Everything. And despite all the losses on the blue line that early in the season and going into the season we all said, well, this is going to hurt them. Nope. Hellebuck needs a bounce-back season. Done. He's having that bounce-back season. Line needs to become a more all-around, well-rounded player. Done. Scheifele needs to maintain his point-of-game status. Done. They need to be able to make sure that if Blake Wheeler takes a step back, other guys can step up. Done. Guys like Roslovic and Kopp have stepped up. This has been a great story in Winnipeg, and we'll see if it continues. So there you go. There's the Panic Index for December 11th of 2019. There you see the teams that are not necessarily panicking, at least the fan bases that shouldn't be panicking yet. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.